All right, let's go ahead and get started. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining us from all parts of the world. Today is the second webinar of our COVID-19 series from the travel practice here at Plug and Play. We did one for US and Europe about 2 weeks ago, and this is the session focusing on Asia Pacific. And we're very glad to have two individuals joining us today, representing the Asia Pacific community and ecosystem of our corporate network to share with us their latest learning practices as well as outlook. For today's session, what you can see on the screen is the agenda. For the first 10 to 15 minutes, between myself and the managing partner of Plug and Play, Amir Amidi, we will deliver a short opening remarks to all of the audience. Starting at 8:45, which is Singapore time, we will have Zach Osumi joining us from ANA, sharing with us a presentation from his side. At 8:55, we will have Margaret Fong joining us as a Plug and Play travel advisor. She was previously the head of innovation at the group level for Trip.com Group, also known as C-Trip. And she will have a 10-minute presentation for all of us as well. Once those two individuals are done with their presentations, we will have a panel discussion with both of them, plus a select few from the Plug and Play site for about 30 minutes before wrapping up today's webinar. Today's webinar will be moderated by myself. My name is Leo Chen, part of the Plug and Play travel and hospitality practice. Together with me are Christy Choi, Olivia Yan, Jordan Bray, Michael, and Jesse. We are the practice focusing on travel and hospitality, and myself and Christy will be moderating today's session. Without further ado, let me pass it back to my business partner, managing partner at Plug and Play, Amir, for a few quick words before we keep the webinar going.
Thank you, Leo. I hope everybody can hear me. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, this afternoon, calling you from a little town called Menlo Park in California. Plug and Play is officially on its 4th week of work from home policy, which obviously has been an interesting experience, I think, not just for the Plug and Play team members, but most likely everybody who's on this webinar today. A lot of learning and I would say shifting in the way we go to work every day and try to stay productive. But really excited about this session. We've been working with Nippon Airways for some time now, and obviously the way we started engaging with them initially about a year ago and the priorities they had as it relates to digitalization has evolved in light of the crisis that everybody in the travel industry and beyond is going through. And Margaret obviously has a very good view of what's been happening in China with her involvement with Trip.com previously. And the idea behind this webinar was really to learn from the experience that our Asian stakeholders have gained through the past few months. If you guys remember, for those of you who joined our previous webinar, we mentioned North America and Europe, you know, depending on where you're talking about and which state in the US you're talking about, or which country in North America and which country in Europe, we tend to be about 30 to 60 days behind the curve that Asian countries and China have gone through. So the idea was to bring their experience into light, and hopefully all of us can learn from it and know what's coming. During the past couple of weeks, I've been reflecting on how the year started and where we are today. Some of you may know that we have a partnership with IATA, International Air Transport Association, and we actually had 2 back-to-back events with them in their Geneva offices in February. And I remember standing on stage and joking around with everybody in the audience, which was a mix of airlines, OTAs, system integrators and other folks. We had about 100 people in the room, in the audience, listening to startup pitches for that accelerator program. And I jokingly said on stage that, you know, the folks sitting in the room have made it through coronavirus, have made it through, they actually ended up having a measles outbreak in their office during our sessions as well, which was quite ironic. So I referred to that saying, you made it through measles, and it happened to be snowing in Geneva in February. And I said, you made it through the snow. And while I was reflecting back over the past few weeks, I realized how much the world has changed over the past, I would say, 2 months, 60 days. You know, even though people were concerned about COVID-19 and what it could do to the travel industry and beyond, in no shape or form anybody knew that we're going to be impacted the way we have been. So having said all of that, we're trying to do our best to get information out there, learn from one another, be it from startups, be it from our corporate partners, be it from our APAC stakeholders, be it from our European stakeholders. And I tend to belong to the camp who believes that nobody knows what the future holds for the travel industry and what the timelines look like. What we do know for certain is that we are going to come out of this crisis, hopefully stronger and more united. But the thing that makes the puzzle very, very complicated is the different timeline that all the different stakeholders are going through and how the cases are identifying themselves in countries like China, in states like California, in the US, in New York. And we don't have all the answers, but hopefully these webinars will go a long way in coming up with some answers for the short run and mid run. And I hope you enjoy today's webinar. I'm very excited to learn from Zach's son as well as Margaret's from the experience they had from the APAC region. Thank you so much, Leo.
Thank you, Amir. Before we dive into the rest of the slides from the plug and play site, a few logistics items here. Throughout the session, for all of you attending the webinar, feel free to submit your questions and comments via the chat window. My colleagues, Olivia and the team will be monitoring the chat window throughout the session and bring those questions over to the panel's attention when we are ready for the panel discussion. In addition, as we go through the opening remarks, there are upcoming webinars and video replay of some of the previous webinars that will be more or less shared with the audience. And once again, my colleagues are going to help out in terms of bringing those sign-up links as well as video playback links through the chat window so that all of you can get those links and do the proper sign-ups. So with that, let me start by introducing 3 upcoming webinars to all of your attention. The first one is actually quite close. It will be tomorrow morning, Asia Pacific time, tomorrow afternoon, US Pacific time. It's a fireside chat between our founder and CEO, Saeed Amidi, and the mayor of Seoul, Mayor Park. And that will be a 1-hour-long session talking about how Seoul, as well as the country of Korea, has responded to the COVID-19 outbreak. The second one I would like to bring to all of your attention, particularly the startups that are attending today's webinar, are the upcoming webinar series hosted by our Singapore office. These 2 sessions are going to take place next week. One is hosted by Asia Development Bank. The other will be hosted by our Singapore office's ventures team. Both webinars are focusing more on the startup side in terms of go-to-market, in terms of responses to the crisis, as well as raising capitals during uncertain times. So for those startups that are attending the session, if you're interested in participating in either webinar, just please follow the sign-up links and contact my colleague, Patricia Nordstrom, out of our Singapore office. And Olivia, please feel free to share Patricia's contact information via the chat window as well. The last one is our Spring Summit. As many of you know, we have decided to convert our Spring Summit to 100% virtual. The timeline is still intact, which means we will be having our Spring Summit throughout the week of May 5th, May 6th, May 7th, etc. And travel as one of the verticals participating in this track will also have its expo during the same week, more or less helping our batch 9 startups out of the Silicon Valley practice, as well as our batch 0 startups out of our EU practice celebrating their graduation of the respective accelerator programs. So we welcome all of you to register and participate in our upcoming Spring Summit in early May. One quick announcement regarding a new program happening here at Plug and Play Silicon Valley. It's a program called Social Impacts and COVID-19, which is all about promoting livelihood and wellness and safety. The program is divided into 4 different tracks, including health, supply chain, enterprise, and commercial. For those of you that are interested in participating in this particular program, from the corporate side, you are more than welcome to join any of the startup pitches, the deep dive sessions, as well as a summit that is slated for September. For the startups, if you would like to get more information regarding this particular program and potentially participate in any of the pitch events that pretty much happen on a monthly basis, please feel free to reach out to us. As Amir alluded to earlier, we did have a webinar focusing on Europe and US in the last month or so. And for those of you that missed that particular webinar, there are 2 things you can do. One is you can follow the link that we will be posting in the chat window so that you can do the video playback at your convenience. And then for the next few slides, I will be sharing some of the learnings, some of the insights that are discussed and shared amongst our corporate partners during the last webinar. Starting with the hospitality side, for Accor, which is one of the larger global hotel chains, their SVP of North America, Jeff Doan, made a prediction. He stated, as you can read on the screen, that US will enter a recession, but at the same time, the country and the industry will have a V-shaped recovery following the recession. And when it comes to hospitality in particular, he predicted that recovery will happen sooner to economy, mid-scale, as well as resort and suburban properties, a lot sooner than those city center properties and 4- and 5-star luxury hotels. Patrice Simon, who's the CTO of CWT, which is one of the largest travel management companies in the world, made a point regarding how they must adapt on a weekly basis, if not more frequently, to the needs of their customers. He called out the mindset that he says all about growth, which enable the team to focus on the continued implementation of future products, even during the uncertain times, but making sure these products have 100% focus on adding value and revenue to the company. Vipul Nakum, who's the Chief Product Officer at OAG, shared their latest data with us during the webinar. According to their forecast, they are predicting a bottom out of global airline capacity cut by the end of April. And the recovery process may differ depending on the scenarios. It could take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. The earliest recovery could happen in November of this year, and the latest recovery could happen in May of 2021 in order for the airline industry to restore the full capacity back to where they were prior to the outbreak. So At Plug and Play, we've been following a lot of the forecasting models and predictions across different, I would say, authorities. The three findings that we would like to share with the audience today, one is from Boston Consulting Group, one is from McKinsey, and the third one is actually from one of our mentors in the ecosystem. So what you can see on this slide are the various scenarios proposed by BCG. According to their study and findings, a V-shaped recovery is becoming less and less likely. On the flip side, they predict the most likely scenario is the one you see in the middle of the slide. As far as the time horizon is concerned, it's going to take anywhere between 12 to 18 months from now for the society, including travel industry, to bounce back. According to McKinsey's report, which is widely cited amongst various travel media, including Skift, they developed 9 different scenarios. And out of those 9 scenarios, they believe the ones that have the blue shape are the ones that are most likely to happen. And the matrix is developed based on 2 different horizons and dimensions. One is focusing on how the public health system responds and react to the virus spread. The other will be all about policy making and how different countries will come up with effective policy to stimulate the economy and the return of consumers traveling as well as spending money. For those that are very much in the travel industry, they did a deep dive into the various scenarios, focusing on scenario A1 and scenario A4. Overall, A4 represents a strong rebound, which means, according to McKinsey, for China and US, everything will be restored back to normal by Q4 of 2020. For Europe, it will be Q2 of 2021. For the rest of the world, it will be Q1 of 2021. But in a scenario where McKinsey calls muted recovery, which in their opinion is much more likely to happen compared to a strong rebound, they're forecasting a full recovery in China by Q2 of next year, Q2 of 2024 for US and EU, and then for the rest of the world, it will be Q4 of 2022. Back to our ecosystem here at Plug and Play, Mauricio, who is the co-founder of eDreams, one of the largest OTAs in Europe, did a survey in the past 2 weeks within our ecosystem as well as across the industry. So Group A represents all the heavyweights in the industry. Group B represents the startups and the corporate partners within our ecosystem. So as you can tell, both groups estimate we will be more or less at 75% of the normal travel activity level in 12 months from now. But as far as being optimistic is concerned, Group A, which represents the heavyweights in the industry, is slightly more optimistic compared to Group B, which represents the corporate partners and the startups within our ecosystem. Last but not least, before I pass the mic over to Zach Song from All Nippon Airways, we do want to share some data from China, since everybody is kind of looking up to China for insights as far as recovery is concerned. And I'm sure Margaret will share more during her talk at a later time. So on the aviation side, what you see on this slide are 2 different charts. The first chart represents a weekly trend in terms of total available flights by 3 different buckets, including domestic, international, and regional. For the China aviation space, regional simply means flights between mainland China to Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. On the right-hand side, you get to see 5 different trend lines broken down by the 5 major carriers, which are represented at the bottom of the slide as far as those logos are concerned. As you can see, there are a good degree of variety in terms of their recovery, everybody bottomed out towards the end of February and started rebounding during the early part of March. But some of those rebound was not very sustainable and faded away towards the end of the same month, but others had stronger recovery. It seems to us that Spring Airlines and China Express, those two airlines that focus on domestic routes, Spring Airline is well known as a low-cost carrier out of China, and China Express is a carrier that focuses on those regional routes that are very special, the routes that legacy carriers typically cannot do. Those two airline companies are doing much better compared to the three major carriers, legacy carriers in China, China Eastern, China Southern, and Air China. According to the graph on the right-hand side, the gray line at the bottom actually represents China Eastern, which seems to have had a slower rebound in the month of March, even compared to the two other legacy carriers on the same chart. And I do want to acknowledge one of the startups called VeryFlight out of China that provided us with all of the data here. The last slide from my side is about the hotel occupancy. What you see here is the weekly trend data provided by STR. In mainland China, on average, occupancy did grow from about 14% to 32% within the single months of March. But such growth is led primarily by mid-scale and economy hotels, which coincides with the prediction that was made by Jeff Doan from our last webinar. With that, I'm gonna pass the mic over to Mr. Zach Osumi from ANA for him to share a few slides with the audience here. Thank you very much. Over to you, Zach-san.
Thank you, Leo. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely, Zach-san, go for it.
See the screen? Hello?
We don't see a screen quite yet.
And Zaxon, I think we may have lost your voice as well.
Whoa.
Oh, I think you're back.
Zach,
Yep.
are you?
We see it now.
Okay. Sorry for the mess. Thank you for having me. I am happy to share what ANA have been gone through so far and what we have learned, and hope some of the information will be beneficial for all the audience for today. And without further ado, would like to start the presentations. So the first step that we took after recognizing the coronavirus threat, so the first thing that we have done is to secure the safety for customers. And it was early January that they reported that one of the Japanese person has infected virus. We immediately announced a new policy for all the cabin attendants as well as the airport agents to wear a mask, not just for the cabin attendant, but all the airport staff as well. And also, we have kind of minimized the in-flight service as well. We kind of like stopped handing out magazines, newspaper, so that less human interaction with the customer will kind of like make the people more safe. And soon after that, after the breakout of the coronavirus at Wuhan, based on the government request, we operated 5 charter flights to help Japanese people evacuate from Wuhan. And we carry like almost like 900 persons out from Wuhan. And we constantly hear kind of the anxiety from the customers. So we decided to post some of the informations about the air circulation in the cabin. And the person who may not know about it, but all the air in the cabin will be totally refreshed every 3 minutes. So the WHO is, I think, advising to avoid the low or the poor ventilated spaces. But the people may feel unsafe about the cabin, but it's not. It's every 3 minutes we are refreshing the air. So some of those information thought we thought that will be beneficial for the customer. So we post those informations on the web to make the customers feel a little bit safe. And also we kind of announced to waive all the cancellation fee as well as the change fee. And also announced to extend the expiration date of the mileage. And, you know, it's not, we should not put any burden on the customers. And those kind of the measures has been taken at the time of the SARS. So we kind of like announced quickly about, you know, we are not going to charge any fees if customer wanted to refund or change the dates to a different date. The second thing is the stop bleeding. So we saw the rapid drop of the customer demand. So we stopped servicing. So at this moment, our international flight is down by 90% and domestic flight is down by 60%. And we have not seen any kind of recovery sign yet, so we may continue to do so and maybe cut more domestic flight. So we will be announcing another, and if you see this photo, this came up from the TV, but I saw hundreds of airplanes grounded on the runways. And what I heard is we are running out of space to park the aircraft. So we may put the aircraft into a suburb places or some other airport as well. It's kind of like a shocking view. And also the other thing that we have done is the capacity paid leave. So we started with the 5,000 cabin attendant, but it's expanded to not only the cabin attendant, but also the desk worker as well. And it's not just ANA, but expanded to ANA group. And it will be reaching 16,000 employees. So they will take, you know, some will take a couple days per month or maybe more. We have to do this. And we just announced yesterday about that. And the right-hand part is, you know, we kind of like suspended or postponed most of the project unless those projects can bring the immediate returns, contributed to the cost of reductions or enhanced remote work, whatever that is. But the most of the projects that, you know, for example, like would like to try a new technology, whether it's work or not, those kind of things has been postponed. And as well as all the advertisement promotion costs, those budget has been cut. So we are trying to minimize the expense as much as possible. I'm sure that all of other companies are doing the same things. Thirdly, do what we should and do what we can. So we are continuing the innovation activities. And we are happy to announce that NA Holding launched a technology venture called Avatar In. We have been working for almost 4 years, but we've been developing the Avatar robotics for almost 4 years. And we decided to launch a different entity to further develop this Avatar robot and develop a new service using those Avatar robots. And the one other thing that we are working on is to try to do something beyond the airlines. So this is still in the discussion with the government, but those NA employees may help manufacturing the protective clothings, or if there is any other thing that we can do for the community, we are under discussion about what we can do. Lesson learned. So the the first and the most important thing is the safety. Always safety first. So we have to secure the safety for the customers as well as the employee. And we have to maintain the operations. And I think it's very important to share the priority with all the employees. What is more important than the others? So always, keep repeating safety first. The second is the isolation to communications and collaborations. I think the communication is more important than ever, especially in the time of crisis. I think people get, really anxious about what's going on, what will happen. So we have to communicate with the people, what's going on, what ANA has decided to do and why. And it's very difficult to over communicate. So more communication is better. So we've been trying to communicate, even though we don't have any issue to talk, we just wanted to show our face to the field. And the collaboration part, I think I myself or ANA alone or Japan alone cannot win this battle. So we have to collaborate, we have to fight together. So, and I think that Plug and Play is one of the perfect platform to do so. And that's one of the reasons that I kind of decided to attend this webinar and become the panelist. So we would like to learn from you guys as well. And, I would like to share what we have learned from us. So I think, more collaboration is required. And we shouldn't, especially the person who is working from home, feel the isolation, they feel loneliness. So communication and collaboration is the key to win the battle. And the last, and not the least, but be positive, keep smiling. I think this is one of the important things. So if you're working at home, facing your wife from, all day long, if you cannot go out, people get really easy to mean people under this circumstance. So try to be positive. Of course, we have to prepare for the worst, but be positive, keep smiling. And I think that the smiling power will encourage everybody to win this battle. That's all for myself. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any further questions, this is my email address. I also have a LinkedIn account. Please drop me a line. And once again, thank you for your attention.
Zach-san, I think you put a big smile on everybody's face from what I can tell. So thank you very much for the sharing. I do believe we have quite a few questions for you as well, both from an ANA perspective and your personal perspective. So we will save those questions for the panel at a later time. And for the audience, feel free to raise additional questions you may have for Zach via the Q&A button under the bottom of your Zoom platform. Once again, thank you, Zach-san.
Thank you.
All right, next we will have Margaret from Beijing joining us and share her latest and greatest. Let me just put her slide up here quickly. So as I previously mentioned, Margaret has been working with Plug and Play for quite some time, previously as the head of innovation at C-Trip. And now she's part of our mentor and advisor network. So without further ado, let me pass it over to Margaret Fong. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much, Leo. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. As Leo mentioned, I left trip.com earlier this year, actually, even before the outbreak of the coronavirus. So today's my sharing is not like
the food for 14 days. The food that comes in, they don't even take the plates out for 14 days. I mean,
sorry, can you guys hear me?
No, there's some background noise, Margaret. I
Yeah,
apologize.
I think so.
Olivia, do you know whose sound that is?
Somebody need to mute.
Yeah, maybe give it 30 seconds.
So in some way, this was
Olivia, I can tell by her face, she's looking at whose background noise that is. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's totally fine. It's kind of a new normalcy for everyone, work from home. So I'd like to share more about my personal experience as a local resident in Beijing, and also as an observer of the ex-insider of the hospitality industry. I don't have some PPT like Zach. It's more about my personal experience. So my sharing will have two parts. The first part, I would like to talk about the new normalcy of our daily life, and which can give the audiences a better understanding, like how difficult, the travel is getting recovered, because a certain policies actually have a big influence on the travel things. And also can explain the certain data that Leo just shared before, why some numbers bounce up. On the second part, I will share what's the travel people, the travel insider, what they're doing right now to kind of to save their business or stop the bleeding. Okay, so let me just talk about the new normalcy. And the first thing for us right now is just body temperature checking and ID checking every day right now. So no matter where you go, if you go to, even you go back to home, enter the office building, somebody will came to check your body temperature first. And they will double check your kind of admission permits, also let you leave your contact information. It's the same thing if you walk in a restaurant or hotel or any public facility. That happen all the time, because the government want to make sure if something happen in the future, they know exact route a person has been through in past few days, which also means if you will travel outside of your city, the government will know immediately. That's the first new thing. The second is right now, everything in our life is by reservation. So for those audience who know Chinese society, very familiar with the Chinese society, they will know we are not get used to make reservation everywhere, and the merchant didn't allow that. They usually love people to waiting online. They love people walk in and then just sit there, order things. But right now, almost everything you need to call for reservation, like go to the bank, doing a haircut. So it's totally new experience. Before the panel started, we talk about like how people go out doing the haircut. It's difficult right now in many places. But in Beijing, it's a definitely must, you can do that. But right now it's totally new experience. I enjoyed my kind of only guest salon like 2 weeks ago. And I'm the only guest there, and they only can take one guest during each time slot. And right now, some local recreational park start to open, but it also required a reservation online. The park will control the traffic every day. The third thing I would like to share is about right now, we don't have any door-to-door delivery service. So for modern city, when people get used to the e-commerce and food delivery, is so, we enjoy when you open the door and something in front of your door, or you can pick up things at your lobby. But right now, it's definitely a no-no in Beijing. The government didn't allow the delivery man go inside to the building or go into to any living community. So the new norm is that we need to go out of the community and pick up by ourselves. So it's kind of a new workout things for the residents. And then the next thing is definitely about the travel ban. In Beijing, we still have a very restricted travel ban. So which means if you travel to Beijing, you definitely need a 2 weeks self-quarantine at the hotel. And the hotel usually requests every guest to do the medical test first. I think this policy definitely explains why someone like medium or the economic hotel, they got some number goes up because we definitely have some outsider to come for business. That's the place they're doing quarantine. And even for the local resident like me, if I have to fly out of the city, when I came back to Beijing, I cannot go back home directly. I need to stay at a hotel for 2 weeks of self-quarantine. My family member can visit me, but definitely they cannot stay with me. Under current circumstance, it seems for people who are doing the travel businesses hard to continue their old business, and they are trying to use a different way to boost and save their business or kind of open a new revenue channel. The major things they are doing, the first thing is the live stream, which is a big thing right now in China. For those people who are not familiar with those live stream things, I will give out some background. So I think in US, you usually see some influencers sell commodity product online, like beauty stuff or skincare, baby product. There were tons of videos and a live stream on YouTube. But in China, we have a different platform doing this, like Taobao, TikTok, or Kuaishou. And our influencer is almost selling everything online right now, not limited to commodity. Especially after the self-quarantine, people have so many time at home, and we will see across the different industry, the online entertainment or online shopping is go rocket. And but there's a lot of stuff actually they didn't promote online before the outbreak. And right now, almost everyone is using the live stream to promote their business. I can give you a live example. Early this month, I think it's April 1st, Chinese top seller or the top influencer, his name is Via. She actually sold a rocket at her live stream. The price is 40 million RMB. You cannot believe this, in the past, but right now it's the hit thing in China. So under this wave, a lot of people in the hospitality industry, they start to selling their items online. So many big OTA like Trip.com, Tongcheng, or Mafengwo, they are doing that. Actually, yesterday, last night, the president of the Trip.com, James Liang, he did his third time live stream on Kuaishou platform, and sold like 20 million RMB hotel rooms via that channel. Right now, the most selling item people are doing, the first thing is the hotel room. They are work with those big hotel names and do the pre-selling, so the customer can buy hotel room and use it before the certain expiration date. And the second big round roll they are selling is the tickets for the recreational park or some site of interest. Although it's hard to travel to the other city or other province, but inside inside your city, it's still you can wire reservation to go to the park. So during the holiday, people would like to go out and to see the beautiful spring. And as Zach mentioned, it's so hard for everyone to keep inside of the room all the time. That's the major things the travel people are doing right now. The second things they are doing to save themselves is actually open a direct sale channel for certain commodity or for certain local items, because the shutdown of different city, we face some like logistic issues. A lot of e-commerce, they are short of the inventory. But for the travel people, they usually have their local contacts. They just leverage their manpower there and also contact with the direct supplier and make sure they can ship out certain of the items for the customer to buy. So right now you will see a lot of people in their WeChat moments, which is very similar like a Facebook platform, and they are promoting the new items they could sell. And also if they can get some like international supplier, they start to selling some global brands. That's some small and medium travel agency they're doing right now. So that's I gotta share right now, and feel free to ask me any question if you may have. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I hope everybody can still hear me okay. I think without elaborating on some of the comments made by Zach and Margaret, let's just dive straight into the panel discussion. Like I said earlier, we've collected a lot of the questions from the audience before and during the webinar here. So amongst several team members from the plug and play side, we will collectively bring those questions over to either Zach or Margaret's attention and have those folks answer those questions for us. So let me start first. The first question was for Zach Song. Zach, do you think leisure or business travel will pick up first? When? And what are the indicators that you're seeing here?
Yes, that's a very tough question. But if we look back in like early 2000, we had SARS and also the bird flus. And the studies saying that the business market always comes first and then followed by the leisure market. And the gap is around like 2 to 3 months. So we're expecting to have a same kind of trends. And when will be the very difficult questions. And at least, you know, it may take longer. And especially in the Japan market, as you may know, that the Japan is one of the country that hit outside China first. But still, the number of inspections is gradually growing, but we are not hitting the peak yet. So meaning that the peak is not yet to come in Japan market. So we may, we are not in the panic at this moment, but the effect could be longer than other countries. And so far, we are not seeing any sign of recovery at this moment.
Thank you, Zach. Next question for Margaret. From your perspective, how will travelers book differently post-COVID-19? For example, would they go to OTAs more frequently? Would they book direct? Would they book Airbnb more often than hotels? What's your perspective in general?
I think one major things they probably change in the future. First I have to say, because right now we have that kind of travel ban, a lot of travel cannot happen. For the leisure trip, people prefer to do the day trip instead of the long trip. And also we see the good surging number on the rental car business, because right now during the hydrogen reasons, people are afraid of taking the public transportation. So they would like to go to those car rental website directly and rent a car, do the road trip, probably just 1 day or two, because if you spend the night outside of your city, there's a high friction, you're going back. So I think that would be the major things to do. And about like those Airbnb or sharing economy things, and I think in the short run, they will the number will going down a little bit, because people worry about the safety and also the hydrogen reasons. Because for those big hotel or usually they clean up and the pesticide every day, so it makes people feel better.
You brought up a very interesting point, Margaret, because it in a very good way, it actually contradicts with the latest pitch from Airbnb during their roadshow for getting the money from Silver Lake, etc. Because they were arguing that people are actually going to book Airbnb more often than hotels because of the uncertainty when it comes to the mix of guests you may end up having at a hotel environment. But to your point, hotels can certainly come out and do a much better job as far as hygiene and cleanness is concerned.
Yeah, I can explain this, Leo, actually. I think there is a big difference between the China and other countries right now, because, you know, my friends in US, actually, they're living the Airbnb instead of their apartment because they want to go to some place with less density. But inside of China right now, we have a very restrict recording system. They want to make sure the people live in a private house, either their owner or they are the long rent people, so they can actually monitor their behaviors. They can keep connect with what they're doing. Airbnb thinks that actually, you know, the platform cannot have that kind of a scrutiny or supervisor for their rent. That's why we see the clear kind of decline in those kind of renting house business in China.
Thank you so much. The next one comes from our audience member, Michael Thomas. This is for Zach-san. Are there additional steps you think airlines will need to take to bring customers back and ensure confidence in flying and being safe? And I know that, you know, earlier you mentioned that communication is key, but are there any additional steps ANA is taking or other fellow airlines are taking?
At this moment, you know, we saw very few people just taking on board. So not so much things we are planning to do at this moment. But if we see the sign of the recovery, I think we may have to do certain things, such as we may only sell like half of the inventory, so that each of the passenger can have some kind of distance towards others. And maybe how we make the people on board may require a new procedures, and we may have to clean, you know, the aircraft more often. And those kind of things are under discussions, but we are not yet decided to do so at this moment. But once we see the recovery, we will kind of like, you know, think about how we can make, again, the employee safe, as well as feel the passenger comfortable to take, to fly again.
In terms of, you know, say, only selling half of the inventory, I know that a lot of airlines right now are thinking of, you know, taking those steps. Will that bring up airline ticket prices? What are kind of the impact of doing so?
Well, definitely, you know, I think at the very initial stage of the recovery, I don't think we will, you know, reduce the fare dramatically. I think people have to fly, will fly, and you know, the you know, sending out the promotional fare doesn't mean much. But if we kind of like feel the strong recovery movement, definitely we are going to slash down the fares to stimulate the market. But again, we are kind of expecting to have the business traveler back earlier than the pleasure market. And once we see the pleasure demands getting stronger, I think we will start doing all those promotional things back again.
Zach-san, this is Amir. I noticed the negative impact on your domestic business has been to a lesser degree than your international, very similar to a lot of airlines. But in terms of the domestic business, how is that divided between leisure and business travel? Just as an indicator of when international does come back, I don't know if that's a great parallel to make here. But for the domestic side of your business, what is the breakdown between leisure and business?
At the time of recovery?
Currently,
it's kind of like embarrassing to say, but we only have like 10 or less passenger on each flight, so it's very hard to say. But I think the only people have to travel is taking the aircraft. So meaning most of them are business. And the like city of Tokyo is saying, or all the prefecture is saying that, please do not, cross the prefectures, stay there. So it's hard to say, but yeah, the only couple of people, who have to travel is currently flying.
Got it.
We got a question for Christy and Margaret. This is related to investing in travel tech. The question was, given the effect of post-COVID-19 on travel, how would it hinder the future of investing in travel startups? Access to capital post-COVID-19, would VC still be interested in investing in travel startups? Will the demand for travel make investors reluctant to invest? Would VCs consider tech-enabled companies that cater to travel sector to invest as a startup still? Christy, if you don't mind going first.
Sure. I mean, I think this question can be answered kind of in twofold. Number one, venture capital in general. I know in the beginning, at least, a lot of investors were saying investments haven't slowed down. We're still considering a lot of deals, but as this pandemic has turned out to be, caused a bigger impact, the data has shown that investments have slowed down. A lot of VCs right now are concentrating on focusing on their portfolio companies. So all hands on deck to keep their portfolio companies alive and trying to help out as much as possible. And that will take a significant amount of their time. Travel startups in general, 2019 was a really great year for travel tech. That was one of the strongest years in terms of venture capital money going into this sector. But what made sense last year or even 3 months ago doesn't make sense anymore. And so a lot of the deals that investors were looking at in terms of travel tech are unfortunately not so great deals right now. So in my perspective, I think definitely it'll be harder to get funded as a travel company unless you are providing a solution that has somehow adapted to the current situation and can still bring in that revenue and survive the next year to 18 months. And then I'll pass it on to Margaret for your insight.
Generally speaking, I think the same thing happened in China, but I would add it up. Actually, in the past few months, we see some new deal came out, the new startup doing the travel, because people start to think about after the virus, the COVID things, will the travel have the new form? Will there's some new service actually needed? And if there's something actually the incumbent, they are actually don't doing that. So I met some entrepreneurs that they are keep asking the same question and start to think, use the new technology, empower the travel industry. But I totally agree with Christine, and like the VC or even the corporate will be conservative about investing in the general travel or any offline service at the current moment.
Thank you, Margaret. I think Amir has a question for Margaret as well. Amir, go for it.
Actually, I have two questions for you, Margaret. What we're hearing from the government agencies and state agencies in the US is that in order to open up the economies in individual states and nationally, the first step is going to be to ramp up testing, knowing basically who's affected, who's not. After that, it's going to be kind of tracing people, who they've been in touch with, where they've been, and basically making sure that the people they've been in touch with are not affected by the virus. And then there's a whole caveat of other steps that the states and the federal government wants to take. So the first question I have for you is, in China, how much testing is currently is being done? And that's the first question. And if I may, I'll ask my second question now as well and pass the mic back on to you. A lot of the suppliers in the travel industry are looking at this current opportunity as a way to get the customers back and take business away from the OTAs to a certain degree and start a direct dialogue with potential customers who may want to fly or book a hotel room sometime in the future, be it midterm or long term. So I was wondering if you had to put your Trip.com hat on, do you actually think the suppliers, be it the hospitality groups or the airlines, is this an opportunity for them to build a direct relationship with customers and take market share away from OTAs? Or do you think that's just a theory?
Okay, let me answer your first question. First, so there is the one thing you need to know is quite different from China and US. So in US, we see the number is go rocketing because the government suggests people doing the test, volunteer test. And but this didn't happen in China right now. And if it actually, we didn't suggest people to doing the test at a hospital. They don't want a hospital full of people. Actually, they are not heavily ill or heavily infected by this virus. So that's the major difference. So, I mean, even the government, I think they don't know how many people they are actually infected or how many people they are carrying the virus, but actually without a symptom. So for us, once we confirm a case or confirm a number of the infected people, they usually must have a symptom. And they need to do some medical test or like the X-ray, give you the certain measure, and then they will take into the ICU, and then that people will be listed on the daily record number. That's totally different from like US. I know like in Bay Area, Stanford already developed some blood test. You can easily test out in a few seconds, and you can test it inside a hotel or even at some other public area. Those things didn't happen in China. So to summarize, the answer is I don't know how many people really get infected, and I hope the government knows. About the second question, it's hard to tell. We see a lot of, not only in the travel industry, actually in some offline service, the direct supply actually want to bypass the agent to contact the customer directly. That's totally understandable, but it's very hard doing that because like food delivery, we have some a listed company like Meituan. They are helping those restaurants to deliver the food to everyone. Right now, so many restaurants want to contact the customer directly because Meituan is actually raising up the commission fee. Everyone is stop making money. They don't want to pay more money to the agent. That's totally understandable. But inside of China, people still prefer to believe there is authority inside of the industry, or there's some certain big name. They will look at what they are doing. And right now for Trip.com, I know they are actively talk with the local government, try to work with the authority to also kind of promote travel and get a customer back. That's what's going to happen inside of China. Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret.
All right, there's another question for you, Zach, I think would be the best one to answer this. But someone mentioned that Emirates started testing passengers for COVID-19 before flying out of Dubai. And they're wondering if this is something that the airlines will start doing when passengers are flying out of a hub and such. Will the airline actually be testing each passenger?
We may. There is a possibility to do so, but I'm not under current circumstance. We are not, trying to do that kind of things. And if we have to do these kind of tests in advance before the flight, I think the people will not coming back to fly as it used to.
Right.
So it may, especially at the for certain countries, towards certain countries or initial stages, they may, but I don't think that will be a standard in the future.
Also, it kind of makes me think like, would that be the airline's responsibility or the airport or the government? Like there's so many people involved, right?
At this moment, at least I know for the Japan market, I think it's the government issue. They it's not each airline to make a policy about it.
Right.
So the government decided to order airline to do it. We have to, but I don't think each of the airline will create those kind of policy.
Right. You guys are in the business of moving people around, not like doing them.
Right. So we were trying to minimize the hassle and stress. And since the 9/11 and this time the COVID-19, we may have to put another burden to the customer. That's what we are afraid of.
Got it. And then one more question, and I'll pass it back to everyone else. We got introduced to a new company today. Basically, it's like a new material for like disinfecting surfaces. Would this be something that like you think that airlines are going to be looking into even more so now?
I believe so. Yes. Again, any new technology or a new service which can ease the customer's pain or reduce customers' pain, so we would love to take into considerations. First, we have to survive first. So the project that we can do could be very limited, but again, we will continue to do innovation stuff.
Dax, you mentioned earlier about the flexible cancellation policy on the ANA side. There's a question from the audience. Have the shifts in refund requests affected ANA's distribution strategy? In other words, is ANA already considering or still considering selling less or more via GDS and OTAs rather than directly?
Actually, no. Again, we have gone through the same situation after SARS and the bird flu. And again, we cannot, win this battle alone. So travel agency GDS is definitely a partner of us. So we are not trying to eliminate anything. So we have to fight together. So we haven't reached any strategy to bypassing GDS or in bypassing travel agencies.
In the US, there has been...
We would like to reduce the cost, but not because of the COVID-19.
Zach, there's one more question. In the US, there has been some talk regarding how the post-COVID-19 world may look like and whether or not there's an increasing demand for products like insurance. The question is, Zach, do you think airlines may begin to focus much more on ancillary revenue compared to passenger revenue in the post-COVID-19 world?
I think the trends for airlines to focusing on ancillary revenue already started. So it's not just because of the COVID-19, but airlines looking for that. And I do agree that the COVID-19, after the coronavirus settled down, we may be focusing more. But always, our main business is to sell the ticket. The ancillary revenue will help airlines to become healthier in a financial way.
Thank you. I'll do one more and then let Christy take over. We have about 5 minutes left before wrapping up. The next question is actually for both of you. There has been a lot of talk around the new normal that will emerge as a result of the impact of COVID-19. So what's your top prediction in terms of post-COVID-19 trends that the industry should prepare for? Zach, would you mind going first?
I think the people will, sensitive about the social distance or cleanness more than before. So airline may require to clean up their aircraft, use the the material in the fabric of the seat. And we may have to have more space in economy. These kind of trends will, I think, become normal after the coronavirus.
I hope there's more space in the economy.
Yeah.
and
I think, there is a human service may be well accepted. I mean, so the digital transformation, like, if you can do anything through the apps without human, transactions, those kind of service may be preferred by the passengers.
Zach-san, if I could just follow up on your response. So I think there's going to be some measures taken on behalf of airlines and hospitality groups in the short run until there's a vaccine for this virus. So my question to you is, in the context of an airline, how do you balance the investment you have to make in new ways of serving your passengers in the short run? And how are you going to basically go back to the old ways of traveling once there is a vaccine until there's another pandemic? How do you balance, I would say, that investment criteria in the short run? And people tend to have short-term memories. I think once there's a vaccine, a lot of the fears may be subsided within a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have to ask ourselves about how we balance it. But again, our current focus is to survive. I mean, if this continues, it's very difficult for airline to survive. So the short terms, we have to focusing on reducing costs as well as how to maintain the operations. But again, we have to invest, and we have to change ourselves to the new futures. And so even now, again, I explained the avataring project. So we will continue to do innovative stuff as much as possible, even though the company may not reduce the tons of money rapidly, but we will continue to do and try to do new things as much as possible and see the market how we react. And I think we got the clear message from our CEO saying innovation is the key to grow. So especially under this circumstance, what we can do is very limited, but continue to do innovative stuff and invest in the future. And gradually we have to make more balance towards the future investment.
And the next question I'll ask for the both of you, what is helping or hindering airlines or large travel companies in general from pivoting successfully during this crisis? In the US, we're hearing all of these airlines being bailed out. There's a lot of talk about whether money should be going to them or not. So what do you think some of the big lessons are being learned in the airline and travel industry in general?
I can go this first. So I think a lot of things about to reboost the travel industry inside of China is hinge on the policy, the government policy. And I think around 1 month ago, actually, when the government want the whole society go back to normal, they suggest people to go back to work. A lot of the travel businessmen start to work. They prepare for the customer come back. But 2 weeks later, the government monitor and the new infection number is going up, and then they didn't fully shut down this industry, but they highly suggested people don't travel outside of your city, which actually make the OTA or the local travel agent, they cannot do any organized tour. So this industry is kind of a half shutdown right now. Only those people, they are self-traveling, they can go out. But as I mentioned, those are high friction, very less people, they can go out. So I think the problem here inside of China is actually the government and central government give the guidance and suggestion, and the local government build up the environment, make people think they are safe to going out, to doing travel. That is a very important thing to build up the confidence for every traveler and every people doing travel business.
Right.
And
So I do.
from my side,
Sorry, go ahead.
Until we saw the anti-coronavirus vaccines, it's very difficult for people to fly back again. But the Prime Minister of Japan is clearly mentioning about the airlines, one of the important infrastructure for the society. So if we have to see the recovery in a Japanese economy, airlines should take certain role. And I think people prefer to fly back again, I hope. And this webinar is great, but I would love to go back to San to meet you all. And I assume that all the attendees feel the same. So I think airlines continue to be a key infrastructure to make the economy back. And we have to think about, we are asking ourselves that how we can help the community to go back.
Perfect. So just one last question. I think this is directed to everyone. It's from AirAsia. So many airlines, they find it hard to survive this era due to cash availability. How do you see the consolidation happening? How would it impact the legacy carriers differently from the LCCs? So Zach, do you want to go first?
Yep. Again, we are in the discussion of getting a loan from the government at this moment. Nothing has been decided, but it's very difficult for us alone to survive if this situation continues. And the consolidation may occur. And I think it could be very difficult or especially for the low-cost carrier to survive. We may require, if the people wanted to have less seat in the economy, I think that will definitely affect the low-cost carrier business model. So, and if there is another kind of like a new measure or step that we have to take, again, that will affect the turnover time at the airport, which also may affect the low-cost carrier. So as a result, the ticket may go up, the cost may go up. So I think there will be a consolidations, but at this moment, I don't would like to think about that. And I cannot imagine NA and GEL is merging to become one company. So trying to do our best to stand alone, but cannot tell what will happen in the future.
In China, actually, the consolidation has already started. And for people in the airline industry, they all know like Hainan Airline actually is in the trouble right now. And Air China will eventually take over the major business of Hainan Airline. You mentioned the LCC things. I think for the regular air company and the LCC, they actually target to the different audience. When the economy is going down, or no matter what the situation of economy, they are, always target to the price sensitive customer. So I think in the long run, both different type of the air company, they have their way to survive this period.
Thank you both. We have time for one last question from Amir.
Thank you, Leo. Airlines in general, Zach-san, they've been a low margin business for various reasons. And, with all the, I would say, the federal assistance, and I'm talking about US airlines right now, that they're getting, the question that pops in my head is, are they going to become, over the midterm and long term, the way they use these subsidies and grants and loans, is it going to make them lazier, or is it going to make them more agile? And hopefully become, I would say, higher margin businesses in the midterm and long term. So I would love to, capitalism always says nothing should be subsidized, although we're living in very, I would say, unprecedented times. But I would love to hear your perspective, as critical as these, I would say, government bailouts are. What is going to be the impact on an airline being a profitable business and a higher margin business? Is it going to be a positive injection of capital in that regard, or is it going to be a negative?
I hope it's positive, but it's hard to tell at this moment. But again, airlines has been running very low margin business for more than decades. And that's one of the reasons that we are continue to focusing on focusing on ancillary revenue. And the new entity that ANA is bringing out is the Avatar Inn. So we may have to diverse the business as well, and something related to travel or movement of the people. But we have to continue developing a new business as well. So again, airline alone will continue to be a low margin business, and that's one of the reasons that we are trying to do innovation stuff along with plug and play, and hoping to along with those new business. We can grow further.
Thank you.
I think that pretty much gives a wrap to our today's webinar. On our very last slide for closing remarks, I think IMF is the first organization that came out and called this particular period of time the Great Lockdown. So obviously, we've had the Great Depression, the Great Recession, and now we're going through the Great Lockdown. I think many people say the Great Lockdown is going to create a much larger impact on the economy, at least in the near term, compared to the Great Depression and the Great Recession. However, I think the silver lining here is the Great Lockdown is by choice. We as a society chose to implement these policies in hope for the best. Obviously, travel is in the center of this perfect storm. Hence the reason for us to come together and share more learnings and insights with each other. At the end of the day, any practice through the unknown period is considered good practice for the society as well as the industry. As a sneak peek into the future within Plug and Play, we are working together with Airbus, hoping to do one more webinar as part of the COVID-19 series. And the topic of that particular webinar will be focusing more or less on how the industry is going to do certain things in the near term to help boost consumer confidence when it comes to in-flight experiences, when it comes to different things that are happening at the airport, etc. So we look forward to seeing all of you again for our next webinar. But once again, to all of the audience participating in today's webinar, thank you very much for your engagement and raising all the good questions. To Zach and Margaret, thank you very, very much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and insights and perspectives with all of us. And last but not least, I want to thank all of the Plug and Play team members on the line to help facilitate the session and bring everything together. So let's get through this together as one team, one industry, and one world. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good evening to all of you. Take care. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Leo. See you guys.